Michael Berry, my mentor, drilled into my head. He said over and over and over again, and this has turned out to be staggeringly true, you never know who's listening. So every segment, not every show, every segment of every show, you put it out there like the most important person in the world is listening to your show at that moment, and that's the only segment you've got them. And he said, if you do that, it can work out for you in the end.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Replace Your Income with Kevin and
Steve. How's it going, Kev?
Well, listen, it doesn't matter what I've been up to because we have another incredible guest. What I've been up to is I've been talking to one of the greatest talk show hosts in the history of mankind, who is literally on our podcast today. Now, look, for those of you listening to our little Replace Your Income podcast, if you don't know who this guy is, you are not only going to know who he is after today, but you are going to go buy his book, you are going to download his podcast, you are going to watch him on TV, and you are going to realize that the one thing you've been missing in your life is the one and only Jesse Kelly, and that is precisely who we have on the show here today. Jesse Kelly. Jesse, what's up, man?
The one and only. I love that, Kevin. I'm gonna have to start using that one more.
Hey, it is. Look, if you have a world famous Jesse Kelly show, you have to be the one and only Jesse Kelly. That is how it goes. This is awesome.
That is me. Living the dream, my brother. Living the dream. It's good to be with you, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. So, Steve, we have this incredible opportunity to have our friend Jesse Kelly on the podcast today. And just for those of you listening, if you don't know who Jesse Kelly is, we're going to talk about his story today. But the short story is, here is a Marine who goes on to become an RV salesman, who runs for Congress, who ends up getting a nationally syndicated radio show, and who writes the Anti-Communist Manifesto book that is a massive bestseller. And I was literally in northern Utah, Jesse, at your book signing, and I watched a line for over 4 hours. People lined up all the way around the building just to have a few seconds of your time because of the impact you have on this country and the impact you've had on each of them. And so we are just so excited to learn about you, Jesse, and to talk about you and your story. And that's really where I'd love to start. I would love for you to introduce your story and a little bit about you to our audience.
Okay. Well, that was quite an intro. I'm not sure I deserve all that. I'm Jesse Kelly, wife, 2 kids, live in Houston. I have a radio show now that got big on us, and a TV show and book, as you pointed out. And I never saw myself doing any of this. I've lived for most of my life an extremely normal life. I come from a construction family. It's what my dad did. It's what his dad did before him. Lived in Ohio with them doing, that's what we did. We're just, normal construction family, Rust Belt. Moved to Montana when I was 10. That's what I did growing up, that and various other odd jobs like kids do. I was a terrible student, especially once I hit high school and discovered girls and beer and all the other stupid things young men do when they have too much time on their hands. It's just, look, young men are idiots, and I was no exception. And when I graduated high school, I went to college for a year, because that's what you have to do, right? Everyone has to go to college. You got to go to college. And of course, that was a disaster. I got a 0.0 grade point average my first semester at Montana State University. That's a true story. At the end of that year, decided I had some growing up to do, wanted to serve my country. I'd always been may have been a bad student, but I was a big reader. I've always loved books, and I used to consume them. And military books were always my thing when I was a kid. I was always reading that stuff, and I always looked up to the Marines. So in the biggest lay-down sale or lay-down recruit in the history of Marine Corps recruiting, I walked down to the Marine Corps recruiting office, which was in the local mall, and I walked in and I said, I'm joining the Marines, and I'm going to be in the infantry. And he said, don't you want to look at other jobs or anything like that? I said, no, infantry. I'm joining the Marines. And that was that. My parents were furious. Everyone in my life was shocked, but nevertheless, I'm a big fan of making impulsive, stupid decisions without thinking things through. So off to the Marines I went. Marine Corps, Iraq and all that. I was there for the invasion and all that. Got out after 4 years. Right back to construction. My folks had started a construction company while I was in the Marines. So I just thought that's what I was always going to do. That's what the Kellys did, right? So I moved to Arizona where they were doing construction. And right about then, I was working construction out of town a lot. And so I started listening to a lot of radio, a lot of talk radio, a lot of stuff like that. Started, Rush and all those guys. And started learning more and more about this Barack Obama character who was running. And again, I was young and impulsive, and I don't think things through. So I think I was 26 years old, 25, 26 years old. And I just decided I was going to run for Congress in Arizona. I'd never run for anything. I'd never even been political before. But of course, I can do this. I'll be fine. I just threw myself into this congressional race, won the primary. They threw some establishment guy up against me, and I blew his doors off by a miracle from God. Won the primary, lost the general election by 4,000 votes. They had to recount it for a week because it was so close, but lost. Greatest thing that ever happened to me. Eventually, that was Gabrielle Giffords I lost to. She got shot. They had to have a special election. I ran again against a guy, her chief of staff, who got shot, and I lost handily that time. And then I decided I was done, but I wanted to keep serving. I wanted to kind of stay in the game in some way, right? So I moved to Washington, D.C. with my family for a year, working for a political group there, just trying to stay in the fight, trying to keep up the fight. Hated living in D.C. Everyone's so freaking rude there. I'm big on manners, even though I'm a barbarian. Hold the doors open for people, basic thing. Yes, please, thank you. Those are big things for me. I try to drill those into the heads of my teenage boys. Hated DC. Everyone's so rude. It was awful. So quit my job. Again, impulsive decisions. Quit my job without a job. Family of 4, bills to pay. Threw the family in a minivan and started driving. This is 10 years ago, maybe? Threw the family in a minivan and started driving across Red America, the Carolinas and Tennessee and all the places that I love, just looking for work, just trying to find a job. End up all the way in Dallas, Texas, no job, money running out, living in a hotel, traveling in a minivan, and it's a Sunday morning, and I decide I'm going to call my mom. Just say hi, check in. She's worried, Call my mom. And we were in Frisco, Texas. It's up by Dallas. And she said, oh, you're there? It's Sunday. Hey, why don't you go to Chuck Swindoll's got a church up there. Chuck Swindoll's a famous pastor for people who don't know, writes devotionals and stuff like that. I'd read a couple when I was a kid, so I didn't have anything else to do. I certainly didn't have a job. So threw the family in the minivan and screw it. Let's go see Chuck's church. And we walked in the lobby of the church and had never talked to anybody there, didn't even talk to a door greeter. And we walked in the lobby. My wife and I both looked at each other and said, this is where we're supposed to move. And without a job, we moved to Frisco, Texas. And so now we're completely out of money, bankrupt. Things are not going well. And I find a job, an advertisement for RV sales on Craigslist of all places. I'm desperate. I've never sold anything, but I got family to feed, right? So I go down, put on a suit and tie. Everyone listening, put on a freaking suit and tie when you go to a job interview. You're not going to your buddy's house to play basketball. It doesn't have to be $1,000 suit. Put on some khakis and a button-up shirt and show the people you care. Anyway, I put on a suit and tie, and everyone else in the lobby waiting to apply for that same job is dressed like a friggin' turd. No one else cared. I got the job that day, of course, and I ended up being good at it by the grace of God. A year into it, they made me the sales manager. Everything was going well. So well, they moved me down to Houston for this big mega store they were opening to be the sales manager there. And as I was selling RVs in Houston, I was starting to get more politically active on social media, which I had been, just throwing up political posts now and then. The major nationally syndicated conservative talk guy in Houston and other cities, many other cities, is Michael Berry, saw something I'd put up one day. This is about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And he shoots me a message and says, hey, you want to come on my radio show and talk about it? Well, I'd run for Congress a couple of times, remember? So I'd done all kinds of TV and radio hits. That was nothing new for me. And I didn't think anything of it. So I said, yeah, sure. So I'm in my RV sales room doing a radio interview on Michael Berry's nationally syndicated show. I don't know him, right? The interview goes really well. He keeps me on like 45 minutes. Hang up the phone, go back to selling RVs that day, get off work that night. I'm in the mood for something pretty fancy on the way home, so I pull into Taco Bell.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there in Taco Bell's drive-thru. Cell phone rings. Michael Berry. Okay. Pull over and start talking to Michael Berry. He keeps me on the phone for a half hour, just shooting the breeze with me. We end up getting to be very good friends, hanging out all the time here in Houston. And he tells me at some point in time, I think if you ever wanted a media career, you could be really special at it. And it was like a light bulb went on at that moment. So I was getting tired of selling RVs. And I just thought, that sounds awesome. So again, impulsive, stupid decision making. I quit my job. This was a 6-figure job as a sales manager selling RVs. I quit a job without a job and just start making stupid content, dumb little funny videos and stuff like that you throw out on YouTube. And I don't know. I mean, how do you start a media career? Who knows how to do that? I don't know how to freaking do that. But started, and again, by the grace of God, the right people were watching, and it took off like a freaking rocket ship. Never seen anything like it. And 5 years later, nationally syndicated for the biggest syndicator on the planet in over 200 cities, and TV show, and this book that people love too. And I can't believe they love the book. And here I am talking to Kevin and Steve. So I have no idea why it all worked out this way, but here I am.
Jesse, I love your story for so many reasons. And I think one of the things that I love about you, I mean, if for anybody listening, if you haven't listened to Jesse Kelly's show, you need to. There's also a phenomenal podcast. You can also go to the First TV, and he's got a TV show there. Watch him, and he's one of the most genuine, Jesse, you're one of the most genuine, good humans out there. You have a passion for people and doing the right things. And that's one of the things that I think is such a rare trait. We're obviously in the real estate space, right? And so even in real estate, we get so many people that want to jump in and they want to make a bunch of money and they want to become wealthy or whatever. And they're always looking for the quick shot. They're always looking for, how do I just go? Maybe I've got to take on risk, but how do I go when I just get a quick hit and I make a bunch of money? And what Steve and I have been advocates for, and frankly, what we put in our book, Micro Wins to Millions. And by the way, Jesse, thank you for talking about Micro Wins to Millions through your reads on the radio. We were able to fully fund the Kickstarter, which is awesome. And now we've got the book that's going to be coming out in a couple months, with no doubt a Jesse Kelly endorsement on the back of it. I mean, Jesse Kelly does such good endorsements. He endorsed his own book, and that was a mega bestseller. So I can only imagine what would happen if you endorse ours. But this book is all about the idea that if you just do the right things in real estate, in life, with your family, spiritually, if you just do the right things consistently, day in and day out, even if they don't seem significant, right? And I don't know, I think every show you do probably seems significant. I mean, you have this massive listenership, but having spent some time with you, I know that you don't plan your show from the standpoint of like, well, I'm going to be speaking to millions of people. You talk about the things that matter. One of the things that I love about you is you don't just go through the news headlines that every other conservative talk show is going to be talking about. Certainly not, just what CNN or MSNBC is going to be talking about, but you talk about the important things. And I think that it's that dedication to principle and doing the right thing day in and day out that has stacked up to become this incredible success that you've had. And I'd love to just hear your thoughts and your opinion on that as just a general life philosophy. We think it's applicable in real estate and in wealth building as well, but just that idea of sticking to principle and doing the right thing day in and day out, leading to something that we may not even be able to wrap our minds around what it can become. But I'd love to just hear your take and your thoughts on that general philosophy.
Well, you're 100% right. And I'll tell you, this actually goes back to something we were just talking about when I was kind of giving my little 2-minute long, 5-minute long bio there of, remember how I'd said I was putting out stupid content on the internet and then the right people were listening? Well, I really fast forwarded through some important things there. Yes, I was putting out stupid content on the internet, and yes, it eventually turned into something. But what that something was a 1 hour at night radio show at 7 o'clock at night at the local station here in Houston. KPRC, I love them, but it's local station, 7 o'clock at night. No one's listening to the radio at 7 o'clock at night, right? Nobody's going to listen to the show. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody does any of this. And so you sit down and I don't even know what I'm doing, right? I've never been trained. I don't know how to do a radio show. What do you talk about? How do you even do that? I've never had, I don't know. So I just sit down, but I was mindful of something that actually along the lines of what you were just saying, that Michael Berry, my mentor, drilled into my head. He said over and over and over again, and this has turned out to be staggeringly true, you never know who's listening. So every segment, not every show, every segment of every show, you put it out there like the most important person in the world is listening to your show at that moment, and that's the only segment you've got them. And he said, if you do that, it can work out for you in the end. And I had no idea while I was doing this tiny show nobody was listening to, right? I had no idea that the CEO of a TV company, that's the first TV where I work now, that he was scouring the country for local radio hosts that he thought had any talent to that he could turn into a TV show. And he had 100 he listened to, and mine was the one he picked. And the same thing happened for radio, same radio show. Julie Talbot is her name. She is the president, the big cheese of Premier Networks. That's the syndicator, a radio syndicator who puts my show on everywhere. So she is the big cheese. I'm doing this tiny little radio show, and every guy who does radio in the United States of America, political talk radio, well, all talk radio because they syndicate everything, every one of them knows her name. They send her their demo tapes. Every single one of them wants that phone call one day from Julie Talbot in Premier saying, we like it, come on board. She was listening to my stupid radio show where I was screwing off half the time. I was playing fart sounds on the soundboard. She was listening to my radio show and loved it. I had no idea she even knew I existed. I of course, knew she existed. I had no idea she even knew I existed. And I remember I get word that Julie Talbot wants to talk to me. This is after Rush Limbaugh had passed away. And I have no idea why Julie Talbot would want to talk to me. You know, I had no idea. But I'm home that morning with my wife, and it gets lined up through her people that she's going to call me at a certain time that morning. It was 10:30 that morning. And my wife and I were sitting out back having a cup of coffee out back, just kind of looking, watching the dog play, whatever. And phone rings, Julie Talbot. I answer the phone, put it on speaker, and right there in front of my wife. Remember, when I quit my RV job, we again ran out of money and we were desperate. Like I was going to go back to selling RVs. I was a month or two away from desperate. And answer the phone, it's Julie Talbot. Hey, we'd love for you to come do our 6 to 9 evening show Eastern time every single night on Premier Networks. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget watching my wife put her hands over her face. Like, who does that happen to? That doesn't happen to anybody. I have no idea why it happened to me, but that happened.
You know, Jesse, one of the things that impresses me about you is, you're a workhorse. You're very consistent in what you do. And I kind of have this philosophy that, when you're getting after something with a sense of urgency, you tend to be in the right place at the right time to meet the right people. And I mean, that just holds so true to your experience in life and over the course of years, just like constantly getting after something with a sense of urgency, whatever it might happen to be, whether, it's a salesperson or whether it's going after Congress or whatever the case may be. Let me ask you this question. You don't seem like you actually work. You look like you're just playing every day, just having a good time. Tell me what is your most favorite thing about, doing what you do and being who you are? And what's the hardest thing about it?
Let me do what all the kids are doing these days. Let me get on my phone so I can read this. The best thing about it is I got a text message about a week or two ago from that gentleman right there, the other bald gentleman on this, Kevin. And I love what you guys do. I love how you change lives for normal people. But I'm going to read you something. He said, Kevin, I'm sure this is okay with you if I read this, but Kevin texted me and he said, I need to tell you this. We just did a call with one of your listeners. He's a convicted felon, nonviolent drug charges, served 6 years, and during that time, by his words, he found Jesse Kelly in Jesus and has completely changed his life and is doing really, really well now. That's what makes this job great. I get these emails, it's not the, hey, can I take a picture with you? It's not the paycheck and all that stuff. I'm not complaining about all that stuff. All that stuff is fine. I get an email from someone saying, Jesse, my dad's gone. I listen to your show every night to go to sleep. I'm a 10-year-old boy. Jesse, I had a guy, a heroin addict, cleaned himself up and got to rehab because of the show. That guy, I have a bunch of prisoners, guys in state and the federal pen who listen to the show. That stuff, knowing that if just that one text message from Kevin, just that one would have been enough for my entire career to make one person's life better. And I'm such a bad person anyway, such a bad influence. And I've done so much bad in my life to know that I could maybe help one person. That is enough. And that's genuinely what makes the job fun. That's what makes it fun. It makes it more worth it than anything else. It's what I love. I really do. As bad of a person as I am, you guys talked me up and made me sound like I'm this good person. I'm really, really not. But I do genuinely care about people. I do care about people. I want people to have good things and have good lives, even with the various ways I've screwed mine up, right? I want people to have something good in their lives. And if I can make your day better for 5 minutes while you're driving to work, working out, head to school with your kids, then that's what makes it worth it.
You know, I love that you shared that and the way that you shared that. And I thank you for sharing that text message. That was an impactful call for us. But I'll say this to kind of wrap up. This is a big reason why we advertise with Jesse and why we love to support Jesse's show and why we're so thankful for Jesse's support. Jesse, I went to your book signing and, hung out for a few hours to just kind of talk to people and be around your listeners. And I got to the very back of the line because you and I were going to go have a meal, which we traveled all over Salt Lake City to find that nothing was open except a burger joint, and we both bought €1. That's a funny story to me, but and part of that was because you had so many people lined up at this Barnes and Noble that just wanted a moment of your time. But I stood at the back of the line, and I was interacting with some of the people at the back of the line, and there was a vet that was there in a wheelchair, and he really wanted to meet you, and your book had sold out at the Barnes and Noble, and there was no more to be had. I had already purchased a copy, and I ended up giving this man a copy so that he could kind of keep that, so that you could sign it and he could have that. And I remember having this moment where I'm looking at this guy and I'm wondering about his life, and I'm wondering about the things that he's seen and the things that he's experienced. And I was looking at the other people that were kind of around him and where we were all standing in line. And I had this thought that I've had so many times, which is what we do from a real estate standpoint, even what we're trying to do with this book, Micro Wins to Millions. Like, nobody knows who Steve and I are, right? We've got this small little influence. We're a drop in the bucket, but we know that the people that we serve and the people that we have the pleasure of serving have changed their financial realities. And there's so many times that I'm in public, and maybe you feel like this too, except when you're in public, you can see far better because you're like 6'8", and I'm like 5'8", but nonetheless, I look around at people and I wonder, I know that they're going through things, and I know that they're struggling, and I know that they're having a hard time paying their bills. And especially right now, I know that inflation has killed them, and I know that they don't know what retirement's going to look like. And I know that we have school teachers and plumbers and dentists and doctors and everything in between, and they're just wanting to have time with their family in the future, and they don't know how they're going to do it. And all I want to do is I just want to take them by the shoulders, and I want to lovingly tell them there is a solution. And it may seem crazy and silly, but it's as simple as conservative real estate investing, and we could do all the work so you don't have to do it. And as I stood there in line and I looked at all these people and I saw who they were, and I saw their hearts, and I saw the fact that they were just connecting with each other, Jesse. All of your listeners just immediately loved one another because you drew them together. And I thought, these are the people that I want to be in business with. And that's why I'm so thankful that we get to work with you and that we get a chance to have you talk a little bit about us on the radio, because it's your listeners and it's your people that are the heartbeat of this country, and every single one of them deserves a little bit more than they have right now. And if we can play some small part of that, it's amazing. And so I just want to say thank you, Jesse, for your partnership. Thank you for who you are as a human. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for helping your listeners maybe learn a little bit about us or a little bit about our book, because together I think we can really do something magnificent. My friends, that is the episode for today. A huge thank you to the one and only, the world famous Jesse Kelly. Go check out his podcast. Go check out his radio show. Go get his book, The Anti-Communist Manifesto. It's phenomenal. Go watch him on the First TV and support this man, because he is literally changing America every time he jumps on the mic and jumps on the camera. So that's all for us today. Thank you for listening to Replace Your Income. Thank you to Jesse Kelly. Steve, thank you for being handsome as always, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.